Okay, so this is La Cuadrada. It's called La Cuadrada because it forms a perfect square. Here we have 4,000 casks, and as you know in Jerez, all of the casks are American oak and 600 litre capacity. Okay, if you notice the top one is slightly smaller, it's 500 litres, but this is just for weight purposes, okay, because this cannot withstand another 100 litres. Okay. As you know in Jerez, one of the unique things we have is that we never use new wood. Okay, like other wine regions, Rioja, Bordeaux, or the best wines go into new oak. Here is completely different. Okay, you have to remember that sherry wines are white wines. They're minimum 2 years in cask, so if you were using new wood, it would completely overpower the character of the grape. So here we try to make the cask last as long as possible so that we have old wood. So as I said before, we have a cooperage on site and we're constantly repairing the cask to make it last as long as possible. Usually from one cask we can get about 30 years maximum. Okay. Obviously you get to the point of the cask where it can no longer be used, completely done. So we do have to buy in new casks. So we buy the oak from the US, they're made here in Jerez, and then we have to have what we call the seasoning process. So we take the cask, we take the young wine from this year's harvest, we let it ferment within the cask. So hopefully during fermentation it extracts a lot of the harsh character of the wood, and then we leave for 3-4 years depending on the year. Only then can we start to use the cask for sherry. So we empty out this young wine and we start to use for sherry. When we start to use for sherry, we firstly use for Oloroso, and then only when the cask is maybe 9, 10, 11 years old do we start to use for Fino. Because obviously in Oloroso wines you want more wood character coming in, whereas in the Fino what should dominate is the flor. Okay, so we only use the very, very old casks for the Fino sherries. Okay. People always ask why they're painted black. One of the reasons is just for aesthetics. So we're taking bits of old cask, so it doesn't look very nice. So we paint them black to make it look nicer. But the most important reason is they are very old casks. They're very prone to leakages. Okay, so if you have a red wine, you can see straight away when it starts to leak. If you have a white wine, it's not so easy to see. So apparently having the black background means that you can see quicker when the cask starts to leak, so that somebody can come and check and see if it needs to be repaired or if it can hold on for a little longer. Okay, so usually we have some, you can see. For example, you can see a little bit here. It started to leak through the stave. So they'll come along and check if that needs to be repaired or can hold on for a little longer. Okay. So this way of stacking the cask is called an andana. So this is a traditional way, and this is how we still do it here. But obviously in practice this is not very useful, because if one of the casks in the middle breaks, you have to dismount the whole pyramid and take that cask out. So for example, in our cellar Las Copas, we have a modern shelving system. So it's 8 rows high, and each cask has its own little compartment, so it can be taken in and out without disrupting the rest. Okay, but at the moment here, we're still using this traditional method. Okay, so here we can see how we're blending the wines in recent years. So traditionally, so you know the Solera system, so you're constantly blending, running the scales. I don't have to go over the Solera, no? You know by heart. So this was traditionally done by hand. Okay, for example, if I wanted to run the scale from here to here, I would take wine from here in big jugs and put into here. Nowadays, it's a little more technical. So we have this piping system. So we have these pipes, they have special stainless steel heads, and this is what we use to run the scales. So for example, imagine that I'm going to run from here to here. So I would use my pipe, I would take out the amount I need from here, usually maximum 1/3. It goes underground to another cellar where I have a stainless steel deposit. Okay? Then I go to this cask, I take out the exact same amount underground to the same deposit. Then I go to here, same amount underground to the same deposit. So I pipe out the whole of this row. They all go to this deposit where they're going to blend together naturally, and then from that deposit, put back in here, 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 here. Okay, so traditionally we were blending this way, whereas nowadays we're blending first this way and then this way. Okay, so you know in Jerez it's opposite of other wine regions, we're always looking for this homogeneous, even product. So this is just a more modern way of getting something even more constant. So I'm evening out all this before I'm blending into the Solera. Because you can imagine temperature and humidity is here is completely different from temperature and humidity at the end of the row. Okay, so we have to even out here and then put into this bottom row. This is how we do it in this cellar, but you'll see later on in our older cellars, we don't have the capacity for this system, so we just do it traditional way. Okay. One of the other unique things in Jerez we have is the terminology that they use. They use a lot of different words for things. For example, we always talk about botas as opposed to barricas. And when they're talking about volume, they never really talk about litres. Okay, so we talk about litres, but the people who work in the bodega, they either talk about arrobas or jarras. Now, arrobas is 16 litres of wine, and a jarra is 12.5 litres. So we in González Byass work with jarras. So it's basically just big stainless steel jugs. So traditionally, all the movement of the wine was done using these big jugs that can hold up to 12.5 litres. So people that work in bodega still think in jarras. So for example, you see this cask, it says 42. This means it contains 42 jarras. So it's 42 times 12.5 litres. Okay, so they always still talk about jarras. Okay. Okay, so this is our library. So here in González Byass we have really rich historic archives. The family were very good at saving things. So we have all the order books from the beginning of the company, all the inventory books, lots of letters, lots of documents which are very important to the company, but also to Jerez and how the industry has changed and grown over the years, etc. So this is our library where we keep all of these documents and old typewriters, old portraits, etc. Okay, so these are said to be the oldest casks that we have in the bodega. We think they're about 300 to 350 years old. They were given to the founder by the Duke of Medina Celi, which is a very rich family here in Jerez. You see he has his statue here. When he gave them to the founder when he started the company, we think they were already about 150 years old. Okay, so we calculate 300 to 350. You can see these are different. These are cherry wood, whereas nowadays we always use American oak. Okay. One of the main reasons we started to use American oak was it was good business. We were trading with the US, we would send over wine and they would send back oak. However, over the years we have carried out a lot of experiments. We've used some Spanish oak, we've used some Eastern European oak, French oak, all different types. And we've come back to the consensus in Jerez that American oak is the best for the aging of the sherry wines. Okay, it's a very slow aging that we want with the wines. We have wines that are up to 30 years in cask. And also the size of the pores for the oxidization of the olorosos, the creams, etc. Okay. In these casks, when they were first given to the founder, they already had a very old solera of Amontillado, which we've continued today. And this is why our 30-year-old Amontillado is called Del Duque, the Duke. Okay, so it's named after these casks. So as you know, with the solera system, you never break the system. You just keep going, keep going, keep going. So in theory, within that one glass of Del Duque, which you'll taste later, you could have some particles from way back 350 years ago. Okay. Now this cellar is called Apóstoles, the apostles or the disciples. The reason being that when the Queen came to visit back in 1862, when we made La Concha, she asked to see a pressing of the grape. The problem was she came in October, and in September the harvest was completely finished. Okay, so there was no more grapes left to press, but obviously was the Queen of Spain, so we had to find some way to fix this. So the story goes that the González family went through Jerez collecting in grapes that people had in their gardens, so they have them for a pergola, for shade, brought them back to the cellar and carried out the pressing of the grape in front of the Queen. Now obviously this must was never going to be used, it was random grape varieties from people's gardens. So they bought this huge cask from Germany actually, and they filled it with all the must that they managed to get from the grapes, from the pressing, sorry. Now they managed to get the equivalent of 33 casks worth of must, which they put in here, which is 16,500 litres. Okay? Now, due to the coincidence that it was 33 casks and that Christ died when he was 33, people started to call this cask El Cristo, okay? The Christ. Now, the name became very famous in the company and in Jerez in general, that a few years later, the family decided to put in his 12 apostles to keep him company in the cellar. Okay, so we have 12 casks. They're each named after one of the apostles. And if you notice at the end, we have Matthias, who wasn't an official apostle. He would be number 13. The reason being that we traditionally used to have Judas Iscariot, but that according to the story, he was such a bad influence that he turned the wine into vinegar. So we had to take that away and put in Matthias. Okay, I don't know if this is true, but we no longer have Judas Iscariot. Okay, so this is where we started to make a very old palo cortado, which is why our palo cortado is called Apóstoles. Okay, so it's named after these casks. In this big cask, we've never emptied it, so technically it still has some of that mush from way back in 1862. We obviously have to keep filling with a young Oloroso, but you see some sticky substance come out the bottom. It's probably this wine from back in 1862. Okay, so this cellar was traditionally completely full of casks. But as I said, we now have Las Copas, which is our cellar on the outskirts of town. So all the casks have been moved down to Las Copas, well, the majority.